a homeless girl crashed a billionaire's wedding and screamed, "Don't marry her." Weeks later, he discovered what his wife was hiding. The late afternoon sun painted the sky in hues of pink and gold, a picture-perfect backdrop for what promised to be the wedding of the year. St. Michael's Cathedral glowed, its century-old walls silent witnesses to countless unions. Today, however, was different. Ethan Blake, the most sought-after billionaire in high society, was about to say "I do" to Veronica Sinclair. Outside, sheltered by the shade of an ancient oak, a girl no older than 12 watched the flurry of activity with wary eyes. Lily clutched a crumpled piece of paper in her thin fingers, her hands trembling slightly. Dressed in a faded t-shirt and worn-out jeans, she was invisible to the guests arriving in their luxury cars. "You can't do this, child," whispered Mrs. Davis, appearing like a protective shadow beside the girl. "No one will believe a—" "I saw it, Mrs. Davis," Lily interrupted, her voice carrying a conviction beyond her years. "I saw it with my own eyes. And he needs to know." Inside the cathedral, the air was thick with the scent of white lilies, arrangements that cost more than some people earned in a year. Guests whispered amongst themselves, commenting on Veronica's gown, a designer original that resembled a work of art in French lace and crystals. Ethan waited at the altar, his tuxedo impeccable, a confident smile on his tanned face. At 40, he carried the weight of his empire with the same ease he wore his designer suit. His eyes shone with anticipation, oblivious to the storm about to shatter his perfectly planned life. The wedding march began. The majestic doors opened. Veronica appeared, ethereal in her white gown, an enigmatic smile playing on her perfectly painted lips. Each step towards the altar was deliberate, as if she had rehearsed this moment 1,000 times. That's when it happened. "Don't marry her!" The shout sliced through the air like lightning. The music stopped abruptly. 200 heads turned in unison. Lily stood in the center aisle, her chest heaving, eyes wide and fixed on Ethan. Security guards moved towards her, but she didn't flinch. "She's lying to you," her voice echoed through the church. "I saw her with another man at the old house by the lake." Veronica's face paled for a fraction of a second, so quickly that almost no one noticed. Almost. Ethan frowned, his gaze shifting between his bride and the ragged girl now restrained by security. "Get this street urchin out of here," Veronica ordered, her voice trembling slightly. "She must be high on something, poor thing." But Lily wasn't finished. As she was dragged away, her words reverberated through the hallowed halls. "Ask her about Michael. Ask her about what she does every Wednesday afternoon." The name Michael triggered an almost imperceptible reaction in Veronica. Her fingers tightened around her bouquet, crushing some of the delicate blossoms. Ethan remained silent, his face an unreadable mask. Outside, Mrs. Davis embraced Lily, who trembled not with fear, but with anger. "It's done now," the older woman whispered. "God help us." The ceremony continued, seemingly normal, but something had shifted. A seed of doubt had been planted. Guests tried to maintain their smiles, but their eyes betrayed the morbid curiosity the scene had awakened. Veronica said, "I do," with her usual conviction. Ethan hesitated for half a second before uttering his vows, a hesitation only Veronica noticed, and it made her stomach churn. As the newly married couple exited the church under a shower of rice, no one noticed the man watching from afar, leaning against a black sedan. Michael smiled, checked his phone where a desperate message from Veronica blinked, and drove away silently. Across the street, Lily watched the crumpled paper still clutched in her hand, a photograph that would change everything. Mrs. Davis placed a hand on her shoulder. "Now what?" the girl asked. "Now, my dear," the woman replied, her eyes fixed on the couple entering the limousine. "We start the countdown. The truth may have short legs, but it always reaches its destination." The limousine departed, leaving behind a church buzzing with whispers and speculation, a bride with a secret, a groom with a doubt, and a homeless girl carrying the weight of truth in her small, determined hands. The sun finally set, and the first stars began to dot the sky. The night promised to be long, and this was only the beginning of a story no one in that church could have imagined. Ethan stared out the limousine window, his mind replaying the girl's words. Beside him, Veronica held his hand tightly, as if afraid he might escape. In the rearview mirror, the driver adjusted the glass, momentarily revealing a familiar face. Michael smiled, knowing his part in the plan was just beginning. The game had begun, and there was no turning back. Night fell over Mrs. Davis's shelter, an old Victorian house that, despite its peeling paint, radiated a warmth many mansions never would. Lily sat on the second-floor windowsill, her eyes lost in the city lights twinkling in the distance. "Aren't you going to sleep, child?" Mrs. Davis asked, approaching with a steaming mug of hot chocolate. "I can't stop thinking about him, Mrs. Davis," Lily replied, accepting the mug with her small hands. The look in his eyes when I shouted, there was something there, like a part of him already knew. The older woman sat beside her, her tired eyes carrying the weight of untold stories. "Perhaps it's time you told me exactly how you started watching Veronica." Lily closed her eyes, letting the memories of 3 weeks ago flood her mind. Flashback. It was a Wednesday like any other. Lily was making her usual rounds through Magnolia Park, collecting cans to recycle, when she saw the black sedan parked near the abandoned house, a relic of colonial architecture awaiting renovation. Veronica emerged from the car first, her expensive heels clicking against the old pavement. She was dressed more casually than usual, but still elegant. She looked around, making sure she was alone, or so she thought. Lily, hidden behind a giant oak, watched everything. Minutes later, another car arrived. A tall man with broad shoulders and graying temples stepped out. Michael. Lily recognized him from Society magazines. He was Ethan's business partner in several ventures. "We need to stop meeting like this," Veronica said, her voice betraying an intimacy that made Lily's stomach churn. "You're the one who chose to marry him," Michael replied, pulling her into a passionate kiss. "Present." "That's how it started," Lily explained, her hands tightening around the mug. "Every Wednesday, same time, like some sick ritual." Mrs. Davis sighed deeply. "But there's more, isn't there? Something about your mother." Lily's eyes filled with unshed tears. "I found this last week, when they were inside." She pulled a crumpled envelope from her pocket. Inside, there was an old photograph and a yellowed newspaper clipping. The photo showed a young, beautiful woman in a maid's uniform holding a baby. On the back, a date from 15 years ago and a name, Sarah with baby Lily, Blake residence. "My mother worked at his family's house," Lily revealed, her voice trembling. Ethan never knew. He was always traveling back then. But Veronica, she was there. "The newspaper clipping is about the accident that killed my mother." Mrs. Davis took the clipping with trembling hands. The discreet headline announced, "Housekeeper dies in car crash in the mountains." "When I first saw Veronica with Michael, something about her seemed familiar," Lily continued. "Then I remembered the stories my mother used to write in her diary. About a woman named Veronica who threatened her, who said she knew too much." A noise from the street caught their attention. A black sedan was slowly driving by for the third time that night. "They're looking for me," Lily whispered. "They won't find you here," Mrs. Davis assured her, her maternal tone masking a steely resolve. "But we need to be smart. Veronica isn't one to give up easily." "There's one more thing," Lily hesitated, biting her lip. "Yesterday, before the wedding, I overheard a conversation between Michael and Veronica. He was talking about someone named Richard, her first husband." Mrs. Davis's eyes widened. "First husband?" They thought they were alone in the church garden. "Michael said that Richard won't be happy to know she's getting married again. And Veronica, she went white as a sheet." Distant thunder heralded the arrival of a storm. Mrs. Davis stood, carefully closing the window. "Tomorrow, Ethan returns from his honeymoon," the older woman said thoughtfully. "What do you intend to do?" Lily pulled another photo from her pocket, this one more recent, showing Veronica and Michael in an intimate embrace at the abandoned house. "I'm going to put this in his office, along with the pages from my mother's diary that I found. It's dangerous, child. More dangerous is letting this woman destroy another family," Lily replied, a determination beyond her years shining in her eyes. She took my mother from me. I won't let her hurt anyone else." At that moment, Mrs. Davis's phone vibrated. It was a message from an unknown number. "I know who you really are, Mary, or should I say Mrs. Blake?" The older woman paled, quickly deleting the message. "What is it?" Lily asked, concerned. "Nothing, dear," Mrs. Davis forced a smile. "Just another spam message." But as she guided Lily to bed, her thoughts were elsewhere, on a past she had fought so hard to bury, a last name she had abandoned decades ago, and a stepson who never knew of her existence. The storm finally arrived, its thunder echoing like an omen of what was to come. Somewhere in the city, Veronica woke up startled in her honeymoon suite, her new husband sleeping peacefully beside her. Her phone blinked with a message from Michael. "Richard is coming back, and he wants what's his." The truth, as Mrs. Davis always said, has short legs, but when it starts to run, nothing can stop it. And this truth was just beginning its journey. Morning arrived with a fine, persistent drizzle, shrouding the city in a melancholic mist. Ethan sat in his office atop the Blake building, eyes fixed on his computer screen, but his mind wandered back to the events of his wedding. The girl's words echoed in his head like an incessant mantra. "Sir Michael." His fingers drummed on the mahogany desk as he stared at Veronica's photo, smiling, perfect, impeccable, perhaps too perfect. His secretary interrupted his thoughts over the intercom. "Mr. Blake, there's a call on line 3. The person refused to identify themselves, but says it's urgent." Ethan hesitated for a moment before answering. "Blake? She's not who you think she is." The voice was raspy, male, vaguely familiar. "Ask her about Aspen 2019. Ask her about Richard Miller." The line went dead before Ethan could respond. He sat there, phone still in hand, feeling the weight of those words. Meanwhile, across town, Veronica paced nervously through the walk-in closet of her new mansion. Her phone vibrated incessantly with messages from Michael. "We need to talk. Richard is alive. He wants everything back. You can't ignore this forever." Her hands trembled as she typed a reply. "He's dead. I saw the body." The response was immediate. "You saw what he wanted you to see." Veronica sank into a velvet armchair, her legs no longer able to support the weight of her secrets. Memories she had buried deep within her mind began to surface like bubbles in boiling water. Flashback, Aspen, 2019. The doctor's office was silent at that late hour. Veronica, then known as Veronica Miller, held a brown envelope with trembling hands. "All the tests have been altered, as you requested," the doctor said, his voice low and guilty. "But this is madness, Veronica. Richard is my friend." "And I've been your lover for 2 years," she cut in coldly. "Just do your part. Richard needs to believe he's sick. It's the only way. Be present." The sound of the doorbell startled Veronica out of her reverie. Through the security system, she saw Lily standing at her gate, holding something in her hands. "Mrs. Blake," the girl's voice came over the intercom, laced with an irony beyond her years. "I brought something that belonged to my mother, Sarah. Remember her?" Veronica's blood ran cold. Sarah, that was a name she hadn't heard in years, another ghost now returning to haunt her. At the shelter, Mrs. Davis examined old documents stored in a shoebox. Her marriage certificate to Anthony Blake, Ethan's father, was yellowed with age. 15 years of secrets, 15 years pretending to be just another kind-hearted old lady. Her phone buzzed again, the same unknown number. Doesn't your late husband's son deserve to know the truth? In his office, Ethan began his own investigation. A quick search revealed that Richard Miller had been a promising entrepreneur in Aspen, presumed dead after a mysterious illness in 2019. The photo showed a man with a striking presence, the same piercing eyes as Michael. "Brothers," Ethan murmured, the pieces beginning to fall into place. His secretary rushed in. "Sir, there's an elderly woman here to see you. Says it's urgent." Mrs. Davis entered the office before Ethan could respond. Her eyes, so much like his father's, met his. "We need to talk about Veronica," she said, "and about your father." Ethan felt the world tilt on its axis. Those eyes, he knew them from somewhere. At the mansion gates, Veronica finally decided to confront Lily. The girl held a worn diary. "Your mother was just a gossiping maid," Veronica said, trying to maintain her composure. "My mother was the only one who knew your secret," Lily retorted. "That's why you killed her. You have no proof, don't I?" Lily smiled, a sad old smile that didn't belong on her young face. "Richard wasn't the only one keeping incriminating documents. My mother kept hers too." At that moment, Veronica's phone vibrated with a new message. It was a photo, Richard, very much alive, holding that day's newspaper. In his office, Ethan listened to Mrs. Davis with growing horror, the story of how his father had secretly remarried, how Veronica had discovered and used this information to her advantage. "She threatened me," Mrs. Davis explained, "said she'd destroy your reputation if I didn't disappear. Your father had just died. I didn't want you to suffer anymore." The day wore on, and with it, the masks began to fall. Veronica, locked in her room, stared at her reflection in the mirror. Who was this woman staring back at her? The ambitious Veronica Miller, the calculating Mrs. Blake, or just a small-town girl who had gone too far in her quest for social ascension? The sound of a car pulling up caught her attention. Through the window, she saw Michael stepping out of the vehicle, and beside him, like a ghost materialized from her nightmares, stood Richard. The rain began to fall again, washing over the city as if trying to cleanse all the secrets now coming to light. But some secrets are like permanent stains. The more you try to remove them, the deeper they set. And this was just the beginning of the storm. Rain lashed against the windows of the shelter as Lily pored over her mother's diary by the light of an old lamp. The yellowed pages contained more than just accounts. They were pieces of a macabre puzzle that was beginning to make sense. March 15th, 2019. Today, I saw something I shouldn't have. Veronica was in Dr. Sanders' office, that doctor friend of Mr. Miller's. They didn't see me behind the partially open door. They were talking about tests, about switching results. Veronica said it was the only way. I didn't understand everything, but I feel like something terrible is about to happen. Lily ran her fingers over her mother's handwriting, feeling the slight ridges where tears had stained the paper. March 23rd, 2019. Mr. Miller is getting sicker and sicker. The doctors say it's a rare, incurable disease. Veronica cries in the corners, but her eyes are dry. Today I caught her on the phone with Michael. "Everything is going according to plan," she said. "My God, what are they doing?" A particularly loud clap of thunder made Lily jump. Mrs. Davis entered the room carrying 2 mugs of hot chocolate. "Find anything important?" the older woman asked, sitting beside her. "Every page reveals something worse," Lily replied, gratefully accepting the mug. "My mother discovered everything little by little. How Veronica and Michael planned to fake Richard's illness, how they forged his death." Meanwhile, at the Blake mansion, Ethan was in his private study, surrounded by papers and old photos. Mrs. Davis's revelation about being his stepmother still echoed in his mind. But now his focus was on something equally disturbing: Richard Miller's medical records. His phone rang. It was his private investigator. "Mr. Blake, I found something. Dr. Sanders, the doctor who treated Richard Miller, committed suicide 3 months after the patient's alleged death. He left a letter confessing to falsifying medical tests, but didn't mention any names." Ethan closed his eyes, rubbing his temples. "Keep digging. I want everything about Veronica Miller before 2019. In the mansion's main living area, Veronica faced Richard and Michael, her face a mask of composure that threatened to crack at any moment. "How?" was all she could manage. Richard smiled, a cold smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Surprised to see a dead man, darling. I must say, you were very convincing with that whole charade at the hospital. The tears, the mourning, I almost believed it myself. But you made one mistake," Michael added, pouring himself a drink from the bar. "You forgot that I knew all my brother's hiding places, including the one where he kept the evidence against you." Veronica sat down, her legs trembling. "What do you want?" "Everything," Richard replied simply. "The fortune you stole from me, plus interest for all these years. Oh, and of course, your confession about Sarah." The name made Veronica pale even further. I don't know what you're talking about. The maid who discovered your plan, Michael clarified, swirling the amber liquid in his glass. The one who had a convenient accident in the mountains. Back at the shelter, Lily reached the last pages of the diary. April 10th, 2019. I can't pretend I don't know anymore. Today I confronted Veronica. I told her I knew about the fake tests, about her affair with Michael, about the whole plan. She laughed, said no one would believe a maid, but I have proof. I photographed the documents in Dr. Sanders' office. They're hidden where no one would think to look. In the old house by the lake, the abandoned one. Veronica doesn't know, but Richard has a secret safe behind the wood paneling in the study. The evidence is there. This was the last entry. 3 days later, Sarah had her fatal accident. Lily closed the diary, her hands shaking. Mrs. Davis, we need to go to that house. The evidence might still be there. It's too dangerous, the older woman warned, but her eyes shone with determination. But maybe it's our only chance to get justice. At that moment, Mrs. Davis's phone rang. It was Ethan. I need you and Lily to come to my office. Now. At the mansion, the confrontation continued. I have a proposition, Veronica said, regaining some of her composure. I can get the money. A lot of money. I just need time. Richard laughed. Time? Like the 3 months you gave me to die slowly, poisoned by medication I didn't need to take. It was your idea, Michael added, to use his fortune to get close to Ethan Blake. The lonely billionaire, you used to say. It will be easy to win him over. But you didn't count on a perceptive homeless girl, did you? Veronica stood up abruptly. That brat has no proof of anything. No, Richard smiled again. Then why are you so nervous about an old diary? In Ethan's office, Lily and Mrs. Davis arrived to find him surrounded by documents. I found something, he said without preamble. Records of suspicious bank transfers from Richard Miller's accounts to an offshore company. All signed by Veronica, using a power of attorney that Hayes coincidentally was made a week before he started getting sick. Lily placed the diary on the table. This explains a lot. As Ethan read the revealing pages, his face grew darker. The abandoned house, I know it well. It belonged to my family before it was sold to Richard. In fact, he hesitated, looking at Mrs. Davis. That's where my father met you, wasn't it? The older woman nodded, tears in her eyes. I was a housekeeper there. Your father was inspecting the house for the sale. It was love at first sight. And Veronica found out about you, Lily added. Used it as blackmail. Ethan stood up. We need to go there. Now. But at the mansion, Veronica was already one step ahead. After temporarily getting rid of Richard and Michael with an excuse, she ran to her room and retrieved a small gold key from a secret compartment in her jewelry box. I won't let them destroy everything I've built, she muttered to herself, grabbing her car keys. The race against time had begun. All the threads of this plot were converging on the abandoned house. Veronica, desperate to destroy the evidence, Ethan, Lily, and Mrs. Davis, determined to find it, and Richard and Michael, who already knew exactly where to look. The truth was hidden behind a wooden panel waiting to be discovered, but who would get there first? The storm intensified, as if nature itself wanted to participate in the drama about to reach its climax. The abandoned house stood like a dark sentinel against the stormy sky. Its broken windows and peeling walls told silent stories of a glorious past, now reduced to rubble and memories. Rain fell mercilessly, turning the overgrown garden into a treacherous quagmire. Veronica arrived first, her black Porsche parked discreetly at the back of the property. Dressed entirely in black, her heels sinking into the mud, she moved like a determined shadow. The small gold key trembled in her hand as she approached the back entrance. It must be here, she muttered repeatedly, her voice almost lost in the roar of the storm. It has to be here. 10 minutes later, a second car approached Ethan behind the wheel of his Range Rover, parked in front of the house. Lily and Mrs. Davis hurried out, shielding themselves from the rain as best they could. There, Lily pointed to the partially visible Porsche. She's already here. Ethan clenched his fists. Let's split up. Mrs. Davis, stay with Lily. I'll go around the east side. Wait, Mrs. Davis grabbed his arm. There's something you need to know about this house. Your father, he built secret passages during the 1990 renovation. I know them all. Inside the house, Veronica had already reached the old study. The once elegant wallpaper hung in moldy strips from the walls. The smell of dampness and decay was suffocating. Her fingers traced the wood paneling, searching for the entrance to the safe Clara had mentioned in her diary. A noise downstairs made her freeze. "Veronica!" Ethan's voice echoed through the empty house. "I know you're here." She cursed under her breath, her fingers now frantic in their search. Finally, she felt a small protrusion in the panel. With a soft click, a section of the wood moved, revealing an antique safe. Meanwhile, Lily and Mrs. Davis had found an alternate entrance through the old kitchen. The girl clutched her mother's diary to her chest like a talisman. "My mother wrote that the safe is behind the main panel," she whispered. But she also mentioned something about a second chamber, under the floor. Mrs. Davis nodded. "Anthony showed me once. There's a secret cellar under the study. We can access it through the kitchen passage." Another noise caught everyone's attention, the sound of another car arriving. Through the rain-streaked windows, they saw Richard and Michael emerging from the downpour. In the study, Veronica finally managed to open the safe. Inside, she found a thick folder and a flash drive. Her hands trembled as she leafed through the documents. Richard's original medical records, proof of bank transfers, compromising photos of her with Michael. Looking for this, she spun around. Ethan stood in the doorway, his imposing figure blocking the only exit. "Darling," she forced a smile. "I can explain." "Can you explain how you poisoned your first husband?" His voice was ice. "Or how you manipulated medical documents? Or perhaps you'd like to explain about Sarah?" Veronica's smile faltered. "Those are lies. That street urchin filled your head with absurd stories. That girl," a new voice joined the conversation, "is my daughter." Richard emerged from the shadows of the hallway, followed by Michael. Veronica felt her legs weaken. "What?" "Clara never told you, did she?" Richard advanced slowly. "She was more than just a maid. She was my childhood sweetheart. Lily is our daughter. When I found out I was sick, or rather, when you made me believe I was sick, I asked Clara to take care of everything in secret. She discovered your plan, and you killed her," Lily finished, emerging from a secret passage on the opposite side of the room, along with Mrs. Davis. "Soon you cut the brakes on her car." Veronica backed away towards the window, still clutching the documents. "You have no proof." "Actually, we do." Mrs. Davis stepped forward. "Anthony, Ethan's father, suspected you from the beginning. He installed cameras in this study before he died. Cameras that recorded your secret meetings with Michael, your conversations about poisoning Richard." "Impossible," Veronica whispered. "You're lying." "The recordings are in the secret cellar," the older woman continued. "Along with the evidence Clara gathered, she didn't put everything in the safe. She knew you would eventually find it. The real Pandora's box is beneath our feet." A deafening clap of thunder shook the house. Veronica looked frantically around, like a trapped animal. In a sudden move, she tore the documents she held. "It doesn't matter," she laughed, a hysterical sound. "I destroyed the evidence. It's my word against yours. Except," Ethan pulled a cell phone from his pocket, "I recorded this entire confession." All the color drained from Veronica's face. In a desperate impulse, she tried to run for the door, but Michael intercepted her. "It's over, Veronica," he said, gripping her arms. "There's nowhere left to run." At that moment, something extraordinary happened. Lily approached Veronica, her young eyes holding a wisdom beyond her years. "Do you know why I came to your wedding?" the girl asked softly. "It wasn't just for revenge. It was because my mother, even after discovering your crimes, wanted to give you a chance to confess. She wrote it in her diary. She believed there was good in you somewhere." Veronica collapsed into a dusty armchair, tears finally breaking through her icy facade. "I didn't want Clara to die," she whispered. "It was just to scare her, make her go away. The mechanic, he went too far." "The mechanic who conveniently died 2 weeks later?" Richard asked acidly. "I was desperate," Veronica cried. You don't understand, growing up in poverty, being humiliated, never having anything. When I saw the chance to have it all—" "I understand," Mrs. Davis interrupted softly. "I came from nothing too. But I chose a different path. There's still time to do the right thing, Veronica." Ethan approached his wife, now his ex-wife, in his heart. "Confess everything. Help bring justice for Clara. It's your last chance for redemption." The rain began to subside outside, as if nature itself paused to hear Veronica's decision. The silence in the room was deafening, broken only by the occasional creak of the old wood. Finally, Veronica lifted her face, tears streaking her perfect makeup. "I'll tell everything," she said softly. "From the beginning." As Veronica began her confession, Lily approached Richard, her father. He placed a gentle hand on her shoulder, years of forced separation beginning to dissolve in that simple gesture. Ethan watched the scene with mixed emotions. His marriage was a sham, but from that tragedy, a family was reconnecting. Mrs. Davis, his stepmother, held his hand, offering the maternal comfort he never knew he needed. The truth, finally released from its safes and hiding places, hovered in the room like a restless spirit finally finding peace. Outside, the first rays of sun began to break through the clouds, illuminating the old house with a new light, the light of revealed truth. But there were still more secrets to be uncovered, more revelations to come. This was just the beginning of the end. The interrogation room at the police station was cold and impersonal, its grey walls silent witnesses to countless confessions. Veronica, still in her elegant but now rumpled black suit, sat at a metal table, her face a mask of resignation. On the other side of the two-way mirror, Ethan, Richard, Lily, and Mrs. Davis watched as Detective Miller, ironically no relation to Richard, prepared to record her official statement. "It started 5 years ago," Veronica began, her voice surprisingly steady. "I was an executive assistant at Richard's company. Michael, as CFO, always flirted with me. At first I resisted. But then—" Her voice faltered momentarily. Flashback, 5 years earlier. The office was almost empty at that late hour. Veronica was organizing some documents when Michael entered, loosening his tie. "Still here?" he asked, a seductive smile playing on his lips. "Your brother asked me to review these contracts," she replied, trying to maintain her professionalism. Michael approached, leaning over her desk. "Richard was always the goody two-shoes of the family. You know the difference between the two of us, Veronica. He's content with crumbs from the empire our father built. I want more." Present. "That's how it started," Veronica continued. "Michael showed me how we could have it all. The plan was simple. I would marry Richard, gain his trust, and then you would kill him," Ethan finished from the other side of the glass, his voice thick with disgust. Lily squeezed Richard's hand, who watched the confession with a mixture of pain and anger etched on his face. "But something changed," Veronica continued. "Sarah. She wasn't part of the plan." Flashback 4 years earlier, Veronica was walking down the hallway of the mansion when she heard voices coming from Richard's study. She approached silently. "I can't hide this forever," Sarah was saying, her voice choked with emotion. "Lily deserves to know you're her father." "It's too dangerous now," Richard replied softly. "Veronica, there's something wrong with her. I've been finding inconsistencies in the company accounts, altered documents." Veronica recoiled, her heart pounding. Sarah knew too much, and now there was a child involved. Present. "I panicked," Veronica admitted, tears finally escaping. Sarah started investigating, found evidence. The mechanic, I only asked him to scare her, sabotaged the car enough to cause a minor accident, but he went too far. On the other side of the glass, Lily sobbed silently. Mrs. Davis embraced her, her own tears falling. "And then?" the detective asked. "Then—" Veronica took a deep breath. "Then came Ethan. The original plan was to use Richard's fortune to establish ourselves. But when Michael mentioned that billionaire Ethan Blake was single—" Ethan clenched his fists, remembering how she had, coincidentally, appeared at every social event he attended. "But there was a problem," Veronica continued. "Mrs. Davis. She knew my past, knew about my involvement with Michael. And then I discovered her secret, that she had been married to Ethan's father. Mrs. Davis closed her eyes, recalling the day Veronica confronted her. Flashback, 2 years earlier. Imagine, Veronica smiled, sitting in the small room of the shelter. The secret widow of Anthony Blake, living like a simple charity worker. What would Ethan think? What do you want, Mrs. Davis asked, weary. Your silence. In exchange, I'll keep your secret. Present. But you didn't count on Lily, the detective observed. Veronica laughed bitterly. A homeless girl. Who would have thought? She has the same observant eyes as her mother. At that moment, the interrogation room door opened. Michael, handcuffed, was brought in by 2 officers. "It's your turn to talk, Mr. Corvino," the detective announced. Veronica paled at the sight of her accomplice. Michael gave her a cold look before sitting down. "You know what's ironic?" he began. "Richard was never really sick. The medication we gave him, supposedly for his rare condition, was actually slowly poisoning him." Richard pressed a hand against the glass, as if he wanted to reach through and strangle his brother. "But he survived," Michael continued. "And while Veronica was busy with her plan to win over Ethan, I helped my brother hide, gather evidence. It was almost poetic, using her plan against her." "Why?" Veronica whispered, betrayed. "I thought we were in this together." Michael smiled, a cold, calculating smile. "Because you weren't the only one playing a double game, darling. Richard and I planned this from the start. We needed concrete proof of your crimes. And you gave it to us, perfectly documented in your obsession with control." The revelation hit Veronica like a slap. Her entire meticulous plan, all her manipulations, had been part of a larger trap. On the other side of the glass, Ethan turned to Richard. "You knew, all this time?" Richard nodded slowly. "After Clara died, I knew I needed irrefutable proof. Michael, despite all his flaws, is my brother. When I confronted him with what I'd discovered, we decided to turn the tables." "And me?" Lily asked, her voice small. "Why didn't you look for me before?" "To protect you," Richard replied softly. "Veronica had already killed your mother. I couldn't risk your life too. Mrs. Davis promised to take care of you, watch from afar." The older woman squeezed Lily's shoulder. "Your mother was my friend. Taking care of you was a way to honor her memory." In the interrogation room, Veronica had completely broken down. "I just wanted a better life," she sobbed. "Fire growing up poor, being humiliated, never having anything. And that justifies murder?" the detective asked sternly. "No," she replied, defeated. "Nothing justifies it." The detective gestured, and the officers began collecting the written statements. Ethan headed for the door. It was time to close this chapter of his life. "Wait," Lily called out. "There's one more thing we need to know." She entered the interrogation room, facing Veronica for the first time since the wedding. "Why did you go back to the abandoned house today? What else were you hiding?" Veronica raised her red-rimmed eyes. "The recordings, they weren't just about me and Michael. There was more. About another murder, a long time ago." Mrs. Davis paled. Ethan turned sharply. "What murder?" the detective demanded. "Anthony Blake," Veronica replied softly. "Your father, Ethan. His death wasn't natural like everyone thought." The silence that followed was deafening. The implications of this latest revelation hung in the air like a toxic cloud. "I think," the detective said slowly, "we need more time here." Outside the police station, night had fallen over the city. A new storm was approaching, as if the sky knew there were still more secrets to be revealed, more truths to be uncovered. The story wasn't over. In fact, it was just beginning its darkest chapter. The revelation about Anthony Blake's death hung over everyone like a pall as they left the police station. The night was clear now, the full moon casting an eerie glow on the wet streets. Ethan drove in silence, his knuckles white against the steering wheel. Beside him, Mrs. Davis looked as if she had aged 10 years in the last few hours. "Did you know?" he finally asked, his voice hoarse. The elderly woman closed her eyes, silent tears tracing paths down her wrinkled face. "I suspected Anthony..." He was investigating something in the weeks before he died, something about old embezzlement schemes in the company. In the back seat, Lily and Richard exchanged worried glances. Flashback 15 years earlier. Anthony Blake sat in his study in the old mansion, papers spread across his mahogany desk. It was late at night, and only a single lamp illuminated the room. "Honey, come to bed," Mary called from the doorway. "There's something wrong here," he murmured, running a hand through his graying hair. "These numbers, and someone has been siphoning off money for years, and I think I know who." The next day, he was found dead in his study. Heart attack, the doctors said. Present. Ethan parked his car at the Blake mansion. The house, imposing and silent, seemed to hold more secrets than they had ever imagined. Veronica mentioned recordings, Richard commented as they entered. "If your father was investigating something, he must have left evidence somewhere." "The safe in the study," Lily suggested. "The one behind the panel." Ethan shook his head. "I've searched that safe 1,000 times since he died. It was empty." "No," Mrs. Davis interjected softly. That was the false safe. Anthony had another one that even I didn't know about. I only learned of its existence the night he died." The group made their way to the study, now modernized but still retaining the essence of Anthony's time. Mrs. Davis walked slowly around the room, her fingers trailing over the furniture as if searching for tangible memories. "Joey said something about a mechanism," she murmured. "Something to do with the clock." Ethan approached the large grandfather clock that dominated one wall. It had belonged to the family for generations. Just then, his cell phone rang. It was Detective Miller. "Mr. Blake, Veronica has made more revelations about your uncle Albert Blake." Ethan froze. Albert, his father's younger brother, had mysteriously disappeared a year after Anthony's death. "What did she say?" "She claims your uncle was responsible for the embezzlement your father was investigating, and that he didn't disappear. He was murdered." The line went dead, leaving a heavy silence in the study. "Albert," Mrs. Davis whispered. Of course, Anthony was always saying his brother had changed, that he was different. Ethan examined the clock more closely. Something about the mechanism caught his eye. A small, almost imperceptible indentation in the shape of the Blake family crest. "Lily," he called, "your hands are smaller." Can you reach in here?" The girl approached, slipping her delicate hand into the opening. Her fingers found a small lever. Click. The clock moved a few inches forward, revealing a hidden compartment in the wall. Inside, an old folder and a flash drive. "My God!" Mrs. Davis gasped. Ethan opened the folder with trembling hands. Documents, old photos, receipts, and a letter addressed to him. "My son, if you are reading this, then my suspicions were correct. Albert has been embezzling money from the company for years, using shell corporations and offshore accounts. I also discovered something worse. He's involved with influence peddling and money laundering for corrupt politicians. I confronted him today. He denied everything, but I saw it in his eyes. I fear he may try something against me. If anything happens to me, all the evidence is on the flash drive. Forgive me for not telling you sooner. I wanted to protect you. With love." Your father Ethan dropped the letter, his hands shaking. "The flash drive," Richard suggested gently. They connected the device to Ethan's laptop. Years of financial records, incriminating emails, photos, and a video. In the recording, Anthony Blake was sitting in his study, recording his last testimony. "Albert is coming to see me tonight. I've installed hidden cameras in the study. If anything happens to me," the recording continued, showing Albert entering the study. The heated argument. Anthony accusing his brother of betrayal. Albert taking something out of his pocket, a small vial. "It's just a sedative, brother." Albert's voice sounded false. "You're too worked up." A few drops into Anthony's drink. Minutes later, he began to feel ill. "Heart attack," Albert murmured, watching his brother die slowly. "No one will suspect a thing." Ethan shut off the video, unable to watch anymore. Lily hugged him instinctively, offering silent comfort. "But where is Albert now?" Richard asked, as if in answer. Another file opened automatically, a series of photos. Albert in different countries, using different names. The last photo was recent, showing him in a small village in Italy. "He's alive," Ethan whispered. All this time, Mrs. Davis reached for her phone. "I'm calling Detective Miller." "Wait," Ethan stopped her. "There are more files here." My God. The next photos showed Albert with Veronica, years before she met Richard. They looked intimate, conspiratorial. She worked for him, Ethan realized. Veronica was part of the scheme from the beginning. "That's how she found me," Richard added. "It wasn't a coincidence. Albert sent her." A noise in the hallway interrupted their conversation. Footsteps. Ethan quickly pocketed the flash drive. The study door opened slowly. "Hello, nephew." Albert Blake smiled from the doorway, a gun pointed at the group. "I see you found my brother's little gift." Lily hid behind Richard. Mrs. Davis stepped forward protectively. "How did you get in here?" Ethan demanded. "Oh, I never really left," Albert chuckled. "I've been watching you, all of you. Veronica was useful for a while, but she made too many mistakes. Now, if you'll just hand over that flash drive." "Why?" Ethan challenged. "The evidence has already been sent to the police." Albert's smile faltered for a moment. "You're bluffing." "He's not," a voice said from behind him. Detective Miller appeared, his gun trained on Albert's head. "Hands up, Mr. Blake. You're under arrest." Albert spun around, but other officers were already emerging from the hallways. He dropped his weapon, defeated. "It's over," Ethan said, more to himself than to the others. As the officers handcuffed Albert, Mrs. Davis approached Ethan, taking his hand. "Your father would be proud," she whispered. "So you finished what he started?" Lily watched the scene with observant eyes. "Now what?" Ethan smiled for the first time in hours. "Now we start to rebuild, with truth, this time." Richard placed a hand on his daughter's shoulder, as a family. Outside, the sun began to rise, its first golden rays streaming through the study windows. A new day, a new beginning. But there was still one last revelation to come, one that would change everything again. Morning arrived with an almost painful clarity after the night of revelations. Ethan was in his office at the company, reorganizing documents and trying to process everything he had learned about his Uncle Albert, when his secretary interrupted him. "Mr. Blake, there's a woman here who insists on seeing you. She says it's urgent." Before he could respond, an elegant woman of about 70 entered the room. Her piercing blue eyes were unsettlingly familiar. "Hello, Ethan," she said softly. "I'm Beatrice Miller, Albert Blake's first wife." Ethan felt the air leave his lungs. Beatrice Miller had disappeared over 30 years ago, long before his father's death. "Impossible," he murmured. "You were dead?" she finished with a sad smile. "That's what Albert wanted everyone to think. But I'm very much alive, and I have something you need to know about Veronica." Meanwhile, at the shelter, Lily was organizing the last pages of her mother's diary when she found something tucked inside the back cover, a letter addressed to her. "My dearest Lily, if you are reading this, something has happened to me. There are truths that need to be revealed, but first you need to know. Veronica isn't who everyone thinks she is." "She is." Lily dropped the letter, her hands trembling. She immediately grabbed her phone and called Richard. Back in Ethan's office, Beatrice continued her revelation. "Veronica is my daughter," she said, causing a visible shock in Ethan. "Aside from my marriage to Albert, when I discovered his crimes, I tried to run away with her, but he caught up with me. He took my daughter from me, threatened me. I had to disappear to survive." "But Veronica never mentioned," Ethan began. "Because she doesn't know," Beatrice interrupted. "Albert raised her believing she was an orphan. He used her resentment and bitterness for his own purposes." Flashback 30 years earlier. A young Veronica, no more than 5, played in the garden of a luxurious house while Albert watched from the porch. "Where's Mommy?" she asked for the 1,000th time. "She abandoned us, darling," Albert replied coldly. "But don't worry, Daddy will teach you all about the world. About how to get what you want, no matter the cost." Present. "I spent years trying to find her," Beatrice continued, tears in her eyes. "When I finally did, she was already involved in Albert's schemes. My own daughter, turned into a pawn in his dirty game." Ethan's phone rang. It was Lily. "Ethan," the girl's voice was agitated. I need to see you now. It's about Veronica. Lily found out, Beatrice said, surprising Ethan. Sarah knew the truth. That's why Veronica wanted her dead. At the shelter, Lily showed the letter to Richard and Mrs. Davis. Veronica is my sister, Lily whispered. Albert's daughter with Beatrice. Mom found out when she found old documents in the office. Veronica is my aunt. Richard paled. The whole scheme, Veronica's entire plan to marry him, had been orchestrated by Albert from the start. He used his own daughter, Mrs. Davis murmured, horrified. Ethan arrived at the shelter accompanied by Beatrice. The moment she and Lily saw each other was electric. The same blue eyes, the same determination in their gaze. Lily began. Your grandmother, Beatrice finished softly. And it's time Veronica learned the truth. At the police station, Veronica was in her cell when the guards called her for a visitor. As she entered the visiting room, she froze at the sight of Beatrice. No, she whispered, recoiling. You're dead. No, my daughter, Beatrice replied, tears streaming down her face. Your father lied about everything. The next few hours were a whirlwind of revelations. Veronica, discovering that her entire life had been built on lies, that her mother hadn't abandoned her, but had been forced to flee, that the girl she had tried to silence was her own niece. All this time, Veronica sobbed, all the hate, all the bitterness, and Daddy used me. He used us all, Ethan said, but now we can fix things. Veronica looked at Lily, truly seeing her for the first time. You have her eyes, she whispered. Mom's eyes. Lily hesitantly approached the cell. Why did you do all that? Why did you hurt so many people? Because it was all I knew, Veronica replied, her voice broken. Daddy, Albert, he taught me that the world was cruel, that we had to take what we wanted by force. I never knew real love, only manipulation. Beatrice reached through the bars, touching her daughter's face for the first time in decades. Jack, it's never too late to start over. But the crimes, Veronica began. You'll pay for them, Ethan said firmly. But you're not alone anymore. Richard, who had remained silent, finally spoke. Sarah always saw good in you. Even after she found out everything, she believed you could change. Veronica closed her eyes, letting the tears flow freely. Forgive me, she whispered. Please forgive me. Mrs. Davis approached, her maternal presence enveloping them all. Forgiveness is a long road, but the first step is truth. At that moment, Detective Miller entered the room. Everyone, Albert wants to make a full confession. He's implicating politicians, businessmen. It's bigger than we imagined. Ethan nodded. I'll cooperate fully with the investigations. It's time to clear the Blake family name. What about me? Veronica asked, her voice small. You have two choices, the detective replied. I continue denying and receive the maximum sentence, or cooperate, show true remorse, and perhaps have a chance at redemption. Veronica looked at her newfound mother, at the niece she had hurt so deeply, at the people she had betrayed. I want to make things right, she said finally. I'll tell you everything I know. As they left the police station, Lily held the hands of Richard and Beatrice, a broken family beginning to reconnect. Ethan and Mrs. Davis walked close behind, each carrying the weight and the release of the revealed truths. You know, Lily said softly, Mom wrote something in her diary that makes a lot of sense now. Sometimes we have to lose everything to find what truly matters. Beatrice squeezed her granddaughter's hand, her heart overflowing with love and hope. And sometimes, she replied, we need to lose ourselves completely to find our way back. The sun was setting on the horizon, painting the sky in hues of pink and gold. A day of revelations was coming to an end, but the story was far from over. There was still much to be mended, much to be forgiven, much to be rebuilt. But now, at least, they had the truth. And with the truth came hope. The rising sun found Ethan in his office at the Blake mansion, surrounded by stacks of old documents. 3 days had passed since the revelations about Veronica and Albert, and each hour brought new, disturbing discoveries about the empire his uncle had built in the shadows. A soft knock on the door made him look up. Mrs. Davis entered, carrying a tray with coffee. "You haven't slept, have you?" she asked, her voice full of maternal concern. "I couldn't," he replied, rubbing his tired eyes. "I just received more files from Albert's office. The extent of this conspiracy, it's terrifying." At that moment, his cell phone rang. It was Detective Miller. "Mr. Blake, I need you to come to the station immediately. Albert is about to make a full confession, but there's something you need to hear first." Meanwhile, at the shelter, Lily sat in the small library with Beatrice, looking through old photo albums her grandmother had brought. "This is your mother as a child," Beatrice pointed to a faded photograph. "Sarah was always special. She saw the good in people, even when they couldn't see it in themselves." Lily touched the photo gently. "How did she meet my father?" Beatrice smiled sadly. "It was at a charity gala. Richard was there representing the company, and Sarah was working the buffet. It was love at first sight, but Albert—" She hesitated. He didn't approve. A miller getting involved with a maid. Flashback 16 years earlier. Sarah was tidying Albert's office when she found a hidden folder. Inside, documents proving corruption schemes, money laundering, and something even more sinister, evidence of Albert's involvement in Anthony Blake's death. "What are you doing?" Veronica's voice made her freeze. "Veronica, please," Sarah pleaded. "You need to see this. Your father is not who you think he is." Veronica took the documents, her eyes widening as she read. "No, this can't be true." "It is true," Sarah insisted. "And there's more. Your mother, she didn't abandon you. Albert forced her to flee." Present at the police station, Ethan found Albert in an interrogation room, looking much older and wearier than he had just days before. "Nephew," he said, his voice raspy, "it's time for the whole truth." Detective Miller turned on the recorder. "It starts with your father," Albert began. "Anthony was getting too close to uncovering everything. It wasn't just about embezzlement. We were part of a larger organization, a network of businessmen and politicians, money laundering, influence peddling. Anthony was too honest for his own good." Ethan felt his stomach churn. "And Veronica, my greatest creation," Albert smiled bitterly, "and my greatest sin. I turned my own daughter into a weapon. Every move she made was carefully planned since childhood. The marriage to Richard, getting close to you, all part of the plan." "But why?" Ethan demanded. "Power," Albert replied simply. "The Blake Empire was just one piece of the puzzle. We needed someone on the inside, someone who could manipulate both families, the Blakes and the Millers." At that moment, Veronica was brought into the room, handcuffed but maintaining a quiet dignity. "Daughter," Albert began, but she interrupted him. "Don't call me that." Her voice was ice. "You stole my life, my mother, my humanity." "Veronica," Ethan interjected softly. "There's more, isn't there? Something you haven't told us yet." She closed her eyes, tears escaping. "Sarah, she found out everything, not just about Albert's crimes, but about who I really was. She tried to help me, tried to convince me to look for my mother. I panicked." Flashback, the day of the accident. "Veronica, please," Sarah pleaded on the phone. "You don't have to go down this road. Your mother is alive. She wants to find you." "You don't understand," Veronica replied, her voice trembling. "It's too late. I'm in too deep." "It's never too late," Sarah insisted. "Think about Lily, your own niece." Veronica hung up the phone and called the mechanic. "Make it look like an accident," she ordered, her voice dead. "Present." "I didn't know he was actually going to kill her," Veronica sobbed. "I thought it would just be a scare, something to make her go away." Ethan watched the scene with a mixture of horror and pity. "And the mechanic?" "Albert took care of him," Veronica whispered, "like he took care of all the problems." Detective Miller gestured, and 2 officers entered with a handcuffed man, the mechanic, very much alive. "Surprise!" The detective smiled. "He didn't die. He's been in hiding all these years, protected by the organization. But now he's ready to talk." Veronica paled. Albert cursed under his breath. At the shelter, Lily received a call from Richard. "Lily, you need to see this," he said, his voice urgent. "We found something in Albert's old office. Something about your mother. Half an hour later, everyone was gathered at the police station. Richard held an old folder. Sarah left this, he explained. A kind of insurance policy. Documents, photos, recordings. Everything she discovered about the organization. But why didn't she use it before? Lily asked. Because she wanted to protect you, Beatrice replied softly. And to protect Veronica too. Veronica looked at Beatrice, her mother, with wide eyes. Protect me? After everything I did, she saw the good in you, Lily said. Like my grandma said, she always saw the good in people. Detective Miller began examining the documents. His eyes widened with each page. This is much bigger than we thought, he murmured. High-ranking politicians, international businessmen, the organization, Albert laughed bitterly. 30 years building a web of power and corruption. And now it ends, Ethan finished firmly. Everyone involved will be exposed. Veronica stood up abruptly. I want to make a deal. All eyes turned to her. I know things that aren't in those documents, she continued. Names? Dates? Operations? I can help dismantle everything. The detective considered for a moment. In exchange for a reduced sentence, she replied. And a chance to try and fix what I've done. Beatrice approached her daughter, touching her face through the bars. It's never too late to do the right thing. Lily watched the scene with observant eyes. So like Mom always said, the next few hours were a whirlwind of testimonies and revelations. Veronica told everything, every scheme, every crime, every manipulation. Albert, seeing his empire crumble, followed suit. Ethan coordinated with his legal team, preparing for the tsunami that would hit the business world when everything came to light. Richard held Lily protectively, finally understanding the full extent of the sacrifice Sarah had made to protect their daughter. Mrs. Davis and Beatrice, two women who had lost so much to this organization, found comfort in each other, sharing stories and tears. As the sun began to set, Detective Miller made an announcement. Based on the confessions and evidence presented, we are launching the largest anti-corruption operation in the country's history. In the coming days, hundreds of arrest warrants will be issued. Ethan looked out the window of the police station, watching the city that would soon be rocked by an unprecedented scandal. Now what? Lily asked, her voice small but strong. Now, Ethan replied, we begin to rebuild, with truth, this time. In her cell, Veronica wrote furiously, names, dates, places, each word an attempt at redemption. The web was unraveling, the secrets coming to light, but there was still one last revelation to come, one that would change everything again. Morning arrived with the first headlines exploding across every newspaper. Our Blake Miller scandal, nation's largest corruption scheme revealed. The arrests began at dawn. Businessmen, politicians, judges, all falling like dominoes. Ethan watched from his office window as police cars and FBI vehicles swarmed the city. His phone rang incessantly. Journalists, shareholders, business partners, all wanting answers. That's when Veronica asked to see him urgently. There's one more thing, she said, her voice trembling in the prison visiting room. Something that even Albert doesn't know. Something about my baby. Ethan froze. You're what? I'm pregnant, Veronica whispered, tears streaming down her face. 3 months. And the baby. The baby is yours. The world seemed to stop for a moment. Ethan staggered, leaning against the wall. How can you be sure? I took the test before the wedding, she replied. It wasn't in my plans. I was going to use it as leverage if I needed to. Another manipulation. She laughed bitterly. But now I just want to do the right thing. At the shelter, Lily found another letter hidden in her mother's diary, this one dated just days before her death. My dearest Lily, if you are reading this, it means the truths have finally come to light. But there's something else you need to know. The night I discovered the whole truth about Albert and the organization, I also discovered something about your father. Richard isn't an only child. He has a sister, given up for adoption as a baby, and that sister is Mrs. Davis. Lily dropped the letter, shocked. At that moment, Richard and Mrs. Davis entered the library. "Dad," Lily called, her voice trembling. I think you need to see this." Meanwhile, at the maximum security prison, Albert received an unexpected visitor. Beatrice entered the visiting room, carrying an old folder. "Remember this?" she asked, showing a yellow document. "Our marriage certificate. And this," she pulled out another paper, "the DNA test you hid all these years." Albert paled. "How did you—" "Veronica isn't your biological daughter," Beatrice revealed, her voice sharp. "She's Anthony Blake's daughter, from an affair we had before I met you. That's why you killed him, wasn't it? When you found out the truth." In Ethan's office, at the phone rang, it was Detective Miller. "Mr. Blake, we just received the results of Anthony Blake's exhumation. Toxicological analysis confirmed he was poisoned, and we found something else, a DNA test." Ethan felt the floor disappear beneath his feet. "What test?" "Anthony Blake was Veronica's biological father, which means—" "She's my sister," Ethan finished, horrified. The news of Veronica's pregnancy, now compounded by this revelation, made his stomach churn. At the shelter, Richard read the letter with trembling hands, while Mrs. Davis wept silently. "All these years," she whispered, "I took care of you without knowing I was your sister." "Why didn't you ever tell me?" Richard asked, his voice choked with emotion. "Your parents, they thought it would be better this way," Mrs. Davis explained. "I was very young when I got pregnant. They helped me, gave me a new identity, a chance to start over. I never imagined fate would bring us together like this." Lily watched the scene, amazed by yet another twist in her already complicated family tree. Back at the prison, Veronica received a visit from Beatrice, who brought the truth about her paternity. Anthony was my father," Veronica asked, shocked. "Then Ethan is your brother," Beatrice confirmed softly. "And the baby—" Veronica covered her face with her hands, sobbing. "What have I done? My God, what have I done?" Ethan arrived at that moment, his face pale. "Did you know?" he asked Veronica. "No," she replied through her tears. "I swear I didn't know if I had—" "The baby," Ethan interrupted. We need to handle this the right way." "I'll take full responsibility," Veronica said. "You don't have to—" "No," Ethan cut her off. "It's my child too, regardless of everything. I'll make sure he has everything he needs." At that moment, Detective Miller entered with more news. "Albert confessed to everything," he announced. "Anthony's murder, Veronica's manipulation, everything. And there's more. He kept a diary, detailing every crime, every manipulation for the past 30 years. The next few hours were a whirlwind of revelations and confessions. The truth, in all its cruel complexity, finally came to light. Richard and Mrs. Davis, now aware of their true relationship, began to rebuild a connection based not on coincidence, but on blood ties. Lily, watching everything with a wisdom beyond her years, held her mother's diary like a talisman. "Mom knew," she said softly. "She knew that one day all the truths would come out." Ethan and Veronica, separated by bars but united by a tragic fate and an unborn child, tried to process the magnitude of their discoveries. "How do we move forward?" Veronica asked, her voice small. "One day at a time," Ethan replied. "With truth this time." Beatrice watched her children. The children fate had separated and reunited in such a cruel way, with a broken but hopeful heart. The sun began to set as Detective Miller made his final announcement of the day. "Based on the new evidence and confessions, we are re-evaluating the sentences. Veronica, your cooperation will be taken into consideration. As for the baby, well, we'll make sure he has all the support he needs." As they left the prison that night, each carried the weight of their discoveries, but also a strange sense of liberation. The truth, however painful, had finally freed them all from their invisible prisons. Ethan looked up at the starry sky, thinking of his father, Veronica's true father as well, and the twists and turns of fate. "Dad," he whispered to the stars, "I hope we can fix everything that was broken. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new discoveries, new beginnings, but for the first time in a long time, there would be no more secrets to hide, only truths to face." and a future to rebuild. A year passed since the revelations that shook the Blake Miller empire. The mansion, once a symbol of power and secrets, had been transformed into a support center for vulnerable children, a joint project by Ethan and Lily in memory of Sarah. It was a Sunday afternoon and the house was full of life. Children ran through the garden, now well tended and blooming. Mrs. Davis, her hair completely white, supervised a group of volunteers in the kitchen. Ethan watched everything from his former office, now converted into a community library. In his arms, a 6-month-old baby slept peacefully. Anthony, named after his father. "He has your eyes," a soft voice said. Veronica, wearing a prison uniform but with special permission for weekly visits, entered the room. Her sentence had been significantly reduced due to her cooperation, and her exemplary behavior promised an early release. "How are you?" Ethan asked, gently passing the baby into her arms. "Better," she replied, kissing her son's forehead. "Therapy has helped a lot. And the volunteer work in prison, it helps keep my mind occupied." Outside, Lily, now 13, led a group of children in a reading activity. Richard and Mrs. Davis, aunt and nephew united by fate, watched her with pride. "Sarah would be proud," Richard commented, his voice choked with emotion. "She is," Mrs. Davis replied, squeezing his hand. Somehow she always knew the truth would set us free. Beatrice arrived at that moment, carrying more books for the library. The past year had been one of reconnection, with Veronica, with her grandchildren, with the life Albert had stolen from her. The children loved the new books, she smiled, especially the stories of overcoming adversity. Ethan nodded, watching Veronica with the baby. The discovery that they were siblings had been a shock, but it had also brought a strange peace. There were no more lies between them, only the raw truth and the chance for rebuilding. "I received news from Albert today," Veronica commented softly. "He's sick. He won't last much longer." A heavy silence fell over the room. Albert E., serving a life sentence, had aged decades in the past year. "He asked to see us," Veronica continued, "all of us, one last time." Ethan closed his eyes, thinking, "Do you want to go?" "I think I need to," she replied. "Not for him, but for me. To finally close this chapter." Lily entered the library, carrying her mother's diary, now a kind of family heirloom. "I found another letter," she announced. "Mom wrote it to Albert, but never sent it." Everyone gathered to listen as Lily read, "Albert, when I discovered your lies, my first instinct was to expose everything. But then I saw something in Veronica, a glimpse of the girl you destroyed, of the goodness you buried under years of manipulation. I decided to try and save her first. Maybe that was my fatal mistake, but I don't regret it, because I believe that one day, when the whole truth comes out, she will find her way back to the light. And you, in your prison of lies, will finally understand the true price of your actions." Sarah Veronica wept silently, hugging Anthony tighter. "She was right," she whispered. "About everything." Ethan placed a hand on her shoulder, a gesture of comfort between siblings. "We'll go together," he said. "Face Albert one last time." As a family. The following week they went to the prison. Albert was unrecognizable, thin, aged, his once cunning eyes now dull. "My children," he whispered, seeing Ethan and Veronica. "No, not the children I raised, but the ones I destroyed." "We came to listen," Ethan said firmly. "One last time." Albert nodded weakly. "There aren't enough apologies. But before I go, I need you to know, your father, Anthony, he was a good man, better than I could ever be. And Veronica," he coughed, "your goodness, the goodness I tried to crush, it was his. It always was." Veronica held Beatrice's hand, seeking strength. "The empire I built," Albert continued, "was made of lies. But you built something real, something good." Those were his last meaningful words. A week later, Albert died in his cell. With his death, the final chapter of the old story closed. It was time to write a new one. The Sarah Center for Vulnerable Children, as it was officially named, grew every day. Ethan and Veronica, now united by blood ties and remorse, worked together to rehabilitate families in difficult situations. Lily, under the guidance of Mrs. Davis and Beatrice, developed reading and emotional support programs for traumatized children. Richard, finally at peace with his past, dedicated himself to social projects, honoring Sarah's memory. On a particularly meaningful afternoon, they all gathered in the mansion's garden. Anthony took his first steps, wobbling between Ethan and Veronica. "You know," Lily commented, leafing through her mother's diary, "she wrote something here that makes a lot of sense now. Sometimes we have to lose everything to find what truly matters." Veronica, now on parole, nodded. "Your mother always knew about redemption, about new beginnings, about family," Ethan added, watching little Anthony laugh. The sun set on the horizon, painting the sky in hues of hope. The children from the center played in the background, their laughter a testament to the good that can be born even from the darkest of stories. The Blake mansion, once a monument to secrets and lies, was now a beacon of hope and redemption. And so, amidst the rubble of an empire built on lies, a new story began. A story of truth, forgiveness, and above all, love. Because, as Sarah always knew, love is the only force capable of transforming even the darkest stories into tales of redemption,